So what I'm doing now is my wash for my watercolor painting. I've mixed up a little bit of blue, tiny bit of black, and a whole lot of water. A wash is not supposed to have a whole lot of paint or pigment in it. It is supposed to be somewhat translucent. So what I'm doing is I'm just gonna kind of get those clouds into the picture so you're able to see in the distance those different, I guess you could say, what kind of looks like fog or mist to me. I'm not yet doing any of my trees, but you decide what you want to do. If you were ready for those little trees in the background, go for it. Right now I'm just mixing a little bit of just straight water. I know you guys can't see very well. I'm going to try to zoom in. And I'm just mixing just some water with that color that I mixed and trying to mimic what I see in that picture. There's no perfect placement. You're the artist. You know, what you're doing is kind of going with your gut and doing what you think you see. That's what art is. You're showing people your interpretation of what you see, which is a really cool thing to really understand. You're showing the world what you see. That's a really important thing to understand, that's what we're doing here. We're not, you know, it's not so much about perfection. It's not so much about matching what I do on my demonstration. It's more about showing us what you see. It is helpful to be able to achieve accuracy when you're learning to paint and you want to be able to make something look a certain way. You want to be able to achieve those results. So I want to give you little tips and tricks that you can use to help you achieve accuracy when you want to paint a tree, you want it to look like a tree. So that's my job, is to give you some tips and tricks to help you see exactly how that's achieved. Now I'll be adding other colors a little bit later, and just remember, this is a winter scene. There's definitely some snow on the ground. There are areas where we have plain white that shows through. There's nothing wrong with that. I noticed on my paper that I have some areas where I have pencil that's smudged. If you notice that, you want to erase that before you start applying water to your paper. So if I start erasing after I have already applied water, that really messes up the overall quality. When I was doing my tracing, my pencil kind of rubbed on that just a bit. Again, this is called a wash, and the whole purpose of a wash is to get some information on the page. So often where you see a wash is also in the shadows, the darker areas. Some people like to go in with a bit of a yellow just to get a light color on the page, specifically with acrylic paint. But when you're using watercolor, everything you do is going to show through. A wash is something that is used in painting many different types of painting. Watercolor painting, I usually start with a color that is the main color you see. So the main color in this, again, was a blue-gray. I mixed blue, I mixed a tiny bit of black and lots of water. The misconception about this is that, oh, I see lots of white, I must need white paint. Not necessarily true. If I was doing an acrylic painting, I might have a lot of white in here, but I'm using watercolor, and in watercolor, sometimes it's appropriate to allow the white paper to be your whites. So that's what you're gonna see. Now, because I've completed a wash in this area, I'm probably going to have to let it dry before I start applying any other types of colors. So right now, I'm not going to start painting that deer. But if you want to, and you're, feeling comfortable, you can go in with some details of your trees. It's not necessarily what I would recommend just now. But if you're ready to move ahead, and I wouldn't do the deer yet, but if you want to do some of the trees, you want to mix in some of that blue-gray and be able to do some of the colors that you already have used for that background. I'm actually mixing blue and green. And one thing to remember is if you are wanting to paint in trees and your paper is wet, is that watercolor going to stay in the place? No. But some people might want to get more color on their paper right now. And if you want to, you do what you feel is right. But if I'm doing fine detail and I want my paint to stay exactly where I put it, it's going to bleed if the paper is wet. Does that make sense? The the paint is going to bleed or spread if I apply my paint, my new paint, to the paper. So if you want to go ahead and put in some details, you can, but it is unlikely that it's going to stay in its place, or you want to be mindful not to use too much. So I'm just going to apply a little bit of green for that tree. I'm not doing my fine detail. I'm just getting a little bit of green in there just while I'm waiting. So you probably can't even see it in my demonstration, but I have so little in there that you probably won't be able to see it. But I'm getting just a little bit of background color. I'm going to go in with a deeper color later. But right now what I'm doing isn't going to bleed too much because I'm using very little water. And if it does bleed, it's okay because I'm really putting down, it's still a wash. A wash is translucent. It is a simple color. It is not highly saturated. And we're just getting information on the paper. For a lot of people, this just kind of helps find the placement. Helps them to get placement of objects down or basic colors. Nothing wrong with that. I try not to let people take on the belief of this is right or this is wrong in a painting. It's really important that you be able to enjoy the experience. And if you're focused on right and wrong, then you're not going to enjoy it very much. There's no right or wrong when you're the artist. Do you see how my brush strokes are kind of like a scribble? I'm not doing my arm is in the air. If my arm is not resting on my table, then that means that I'm not going to be able to control my brush very much. And sometimes I like that. If I want to control my brush more, I make sure I rest my hand and my arm on my table. So right now, I've almost done with just some basic colors. No real fine detail. I'm just getting information on the page. And then I'm going to be able to go in later on and refine those details.